181 candidates, 9 parties, 89 seats in contest, 66 rallies, and many were rockers, others, well, not quite. Over 37 locations, hundreds of thousands of Singaporeans thronging to the rallies, some for entertainment, but I get the sense that this time round, a lot more of them were there with more than casual interest. And all of this in 9 days. Today is the last day of campaigning for GE2015, likely to be a watershed election. Frankly, I don't know what that means anymore. Plenty of ink and airtime has been spent on party profiling, political broadcasts, debates and discussions. A new crop of media entities has added eyes, ears and fresh perspectives to an election season that used to be mostly played out on big titles. The playing field has changed drastically. The play has changed, or has it? And it's come to this. We're hours away from cooling off day, a chance for brief introspection before decision time. To what extent will old and new, well, not so new media influence voting behavior and political participation? How have Singaporeans been talking about politics online? Are we seeing a resurgence of ground interest in the 2.4 million voters because for the first time since 1965, all wards are being contested? Has it become really a more level playing field this time? It's time for the scribes to have their say, the last say. And why not? After all, it's the journalists who have been on the ground, watching, sensing and sharing perspectives, election after election. It's about time that journalists are given their rightful place at the table. Welcome to the final piece in our special series of GE2015 debates. I'm Vishwa Sadashivan. It is my wish to see this become a tradition, this gathering of journalists, at the end of the campaigning for each GE, where the journalists from both the mainstream media and online media have their say as a collective on the final day of campaigning. And IQ is happy to make this happen. My panelists today are experts in their own fields, but are drawn together by a common thread, a belief in the power of the pen or camera, and a desire for advocacy, journalism, or progressive journalism, if you will, an incredible and an alternative voice, hopefully credible as well, for those who might not have one. A desire to redress public discourse, to promote engagement. First up, Tan Hao, Senior Research Fellow with the Institute of Policy Studies, IPS. Tan Hao is clearly the expert in the field, having done extensive research in media and internet policy for several years now. In his past life, Tan Hao was a respected political journalist for 15 years. He has other accolades, but those are irrelevant today. Welcome, my dear friend.
Thank you.
Our second panelist is a feisty, prolific, irritating guy, brutally honest, irritating to the right people, and brutally honest. His name is Howard Lee. His commentaries as editor of the commentary section of the online Citizen, affectionately called TOC, has been making waves. With the changed media landscape, it is imperative that we have an online media representative on a panel such as this. And frankly, I can't think of a more credible person than Howard, at this point in time at least, to take the seat. Thank you for making the time, Howard. I know that you'd have preferred to be on the ground.
Yes.
Right? But never mind. Thank you. Our final panelist, certainly not least, is Peng, Dr. Peng, Director of the Singapore Internet Research Centre at the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information at the Nanyang Technological Institute, or NTU. A lawyer by training, Peng worked as a journalist before succumbing to the lure of the academia. His research interests lie in media law and policy, and he's the author of a book called Ordering Chaos, Regulating the Internet, which argues that the Internet can be regulated. Well, I don't think it's going to be a very pleasant afternoon for you. Let's look out for what's coming from your left. So let's keep this going. Now, in studio, we are delighted to have some of our friends from the press, broadcast, and online media, seasoned reporters, well, mostly ex-reporters, but you know, it doesn't leave the blood, does it? And some aspiring reporters and journalists, editors and correspondents who have collective wisdom, and we're eager to tap their collective wisdom in this discussion. We were hoping to have more representatives from the online media, but understandably, they have to deploy their scarce resources on the ground. This discussion is being streamed live, so do call in with your questions on 6516-2003 or text in via poll everywhere. You'll find the links on our site. Okay, let's get this show moving, shall we? First question, Tan Hao. Soon after the last election, 2011, IPS had come up with a survey, a very extensive survey. And one of the findings of the survey was, contrary to popular belief, that most of the people who voted had their source of information not from online, but from the mainstream media. And you were saying that the impact of online was only about 20%. Now, that's quite surprising. Do you think in this GE it has changed? And if so, how much?
Thanks, Vishal. Thanks for having me. Let me just recap that our finding was not so much on just online use of online media, but we differentiated between mainstream media and alternative media. That means that media offering mainstream views versus media offering alternative views, such as the online citizen. And we found that only 1/5 of the people we polled, 2,000 people from all over Singapore, actually read news on the election from the alternative online sites, such as the Online Citizen, Temasek Emeritus, as well as...
And those days were just a handful?
Yeah, that's right. And then also 1/5 shared election news on Facebook. So those people who go online might think that the whole Singapore is into the conversation, but actually it's just a minority. And the other fascinating fact is that online, the reach of the mainstream media, that means the websites of the Straits Times, Channel News Asia, Today, is actually larger than that of the alternative sites such as the Online Citizen. So I think that you might have the impression by going online that a lot of people are reading the alternative material, but that is not.
But has it changed?
I have a feeling that it has changed. We just did very rough straw polls of various people we know, making sure that we don't ask people just in our networks, because we have the same interests and so forth. More, I would say, ordinary people. And we found that, I was quite surprised that many of them, for example, have seen the videos about Low Tia Kiang, the videos of Chee Soon Juan making speeches at the rallies. To what extent that is so will be revealed, because we are doing a follow-up survey. Me and my colleague Carol Soon, she's leading the study, she's here in the audience tonight. We'll be doing a study about how much people are using online media, the various kinds of media, as well as WhatsApp.
Right. Now, let me ask you, the online space doesn't quite include those who are more comfortable in Chinese. And that's a significant proportion of the crowd, right? Do you think that the virtual absence of strong Chinese online portals, political discussion portals, is a further impediment to the reach of that heartlander sector?
I think so, because offline you see that the Chinese newspapers actually have a reach, especially the evening papers. They have a reach which shows that there is quite a big segment of the people who are more comfortable in Chinese. And I understand from the editor of TRE that actually the Chinese articles are quite popular, surprisingly popular. And of course, there's very little discourse online. There's very little discourse in Mandarin, in anything online in Singapore.
Why is that so?
I suppose from the education system, and that, the network effect. If I write in English, more people will write in English because they share the material.
Actually, I'm sure it would be very different if you have online in Tamil.
Yeah, actually...
because Indians have a desire to discuss a lot more. Right?
Yeah. My colleague Carol and Arun actually did a study about Tamil language and Chinese language blogosphere in Singapore. and actually found out that actually it's not very political. And the people in Tamil, for instance, who are using the internet to talk about things, tend not to be the old, Singapore-born Tamil speaking.
I see.
They tend to be the new immigrants.
I see.
And when they talk about politics at all, it tends to be about India politics, not Singapore politics.
Okay, right. Okay, so Howard, what's your own sense? You've been in the online space or the cyberspace for a long time, and how many years actually?
Been with TOC for 2 years.
2 years, but before that you've still been writing, freelancing, and so on.
Yeah.
So you've been active in the space. What's your sense, your own sense of the ground? Does it sort of relate to what Tanha has just said?
Well, if you ask me that question, obviously I have to say yes.
I'm hoping for some objectivity here.
I would have to say that I've started writing for TOC since about 2010, and the interesting thing is, let's go back slightly to Tanha's point about there being more people going online, which is your original question. I think we have to accept that there will be. Even Tanha's study showed that there's been an increase. And if we draw the lines and the graphs, eventually you'll be looking at more people going online. And I think it's a lot more to do with the accessibility of information and of technology in particular. TOC actually has a lot of readers who actually use their mobile phones. And I see with higher mobile penetration, that is likely to increase as well. What I'm actually more interested in is the type of discussion that goes on online. It used to be a situation when I was writing for TOC right at the very beginning. I have a personal interest in, say, environment issues. And when I put up an article about the environment, usually people will say, you read the comments, they will tell you, why are you concerned about this? It should be more focused on bread and butter issues. But we see that changing. So I would say partly it's attributed to the online sphere being seen as more of a champion of civil society causes. Yeah. So people are now more open to those ideas. But also a willingness for us to bring, or for people to be more willing towards topics that they're not comfortable with, are not usually so familiar with. And in that sense, to say it's grown quite a bit in terms of the quality.
So do you think that has had an impact on the way the online space is viewed, is being consumed, the content is being consumed in this GE?
In terms of the, if you take a look at it from the political perspective, I think people are a lot more, and this is based on anecdotal evidence, the comments that we've been reading online as well, on our own website. People are a lot more open to the discussion of ideas, political ideas, and it's not just about something that's between, I'm pro-opposition or I'm pro-establishment. It is more of a more open discussion of what are issues that plague Singapore. What is it that the opposition parties are proposing? What is it that PAP has done wrong? So that quality of debate, I would really say, has gone up quite a bit. You still get the people who say that, vote them out, but you're seeing a lot more of all this engagement that goes on a little bit beyond what it used to be, I guess.
Yeah, thanks. So, Peng, my question to you is, there are really three major players here, right? You've got the government, right, which is really PAP ruling party. And then you've got the media, which is no more a monolith. You've got the mainstream media, you've got, the various portals, right? Discussion portals. I'm not talking about the online version of the mainstream media. I'm talking about TOC, IQ, Mothership, and so on, middle ground, right? And then you have the populace, the consumers, right? What do you see as the relationship between these three groups? How do you see it? Has it changed? That relationship and the protocol in that relationship, has it changed?
Okay, actually it's a good question for tutorial.
Can you not give a tutorial kind of answer?
Okay, I took down some points, so I'm going to look down and refer to them. I think the mainstream media is still monopolistic, and it's a very simple test. Suppose there's a defamation suit by one of the papers, and you, not the paper, but you want to write in defense of them, right? Where can you publish this? Okay, because the defamation law says that if you try and defend yourself, then you're not really sorry. If you're wrong, but you're not really sorry. It's not unreserved apology. Therefore, you cannot you cannot write something different. Because I've tried to do that once for a paper. I think it was the To Chin Chai episode, and I said it's clearly
The new paper episode.
New paper, yeah, clearly wrong, and therefore you shouldn't go after them, And they couldn't none of the papers at the time there's no today. None of the papers could publish it because they're part of the group, and you can't defend yourself because then you're not really sorry. You see, it's a law, right? If you're really sorry, then you won't you don't grovel, right? You can't grovel, so you defend yourself, you're not groveling, right? So I think that the mainstream media still, therefore, is not quite sort of freely competitive, right? It's a monopoly situation. It's a structural issue. I'm not saying the content themselves are not balanced or the contents are biased per se, but just structurally, that's one issue there. So what it means is that still, even though it's the online part of it, you still have now you have different groups. You have more sort of more radical groups, and you have more balanced groups that have come on. But it still would be sort of seen as anti this monopoly. So there's still sort of this remnant or this legacy there.
So let me ask you a more specific question. Do you think that the government, the PAP, is the way the PAP views the online space, the social media players, like those we mentioned before? Do you think they are more accepting that this is the way they are, that it's not necessarily, as Howard says, you're either with me or against me, but that this is actually healthy for Singapore? Or do they still see us as a necessary evil?
Okay, so it's I would say it's a slow progress because I was part of the AIMS, this group that looked at the impact of new media in society.
Yeah.
This is eons ago now. And at the time, the government departments would not respond to a letter from the Straits Times that was published online only. Because the forum page had your hard copy and then you have an online version only. And they refused to respond to online letters. Letters are published online only. So AIM says, you can't do that, you should. I mean, they are the same, it's just that there's not enough space, so, respond. So that's the first sort of step. It's a baby step, a micro step, but the first step.
That was about 5 years ago.
That's, some time ago now.
Yeah.
But so let's move forward. But now if, as we were saying, for the online media, can online media journalists attend regular press conferences organized by the government agencies? Right. So these are sort of first steps to acceptance. I won't say that they see this as necessary evil. I think that it's sort of, to some extent, it's sort of understandable. You sort of be cautious and conservative, I guess as the typical bureaucrat or civil servant. But I think we reach a stage where they are beginning to accept these and sort of arguing that you should accept the media, especially where they try to be balanced, because you're seeing those sort of your balanced media coming on online.
Okay, I like the word balance. Actually, I hate it. This word balance is not the same. I'd like to throw this open to the journalists in the audience. This word balance is not the same as neutral. But the government keeps using the word balance. Balance basically means if I do a vox pop, it means I get comments on the ground. If I get 5 people saying negative things about the PAP, I need to find 5 people saying positive things. That's not the same as being neutral. Neutral doesn't necessarily require balance. Neutral means your orientation is neutral, but you will present it as it is. So when you go out there, as long as you're not going out of your way to look for negative comments, that's not being neutral, right? But in the way you approach, if your sample size is fairly random, and then the result is not balanced, you would still be neutral in putting it out. So is neutrality something that the media should aspire to, or balance? Balance is misleading, because in any GE or main event, it's not balanced, is it? Because at certain points, even in this GE, in the 9 days, the temperature went up and down. At certain points, it seemed to favor one group, and then at certain points, not. And the media, being neutral, should present it as it is, not impute its own orientation, but show it as it is. So what's your sense of it? Yes, please.
I think the word is not balanced. I think the word we are looking for is objectivity, which you said. And
Objectivity is different from balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Could you say that again, please?
okay, the word is, consume a lot of information on the internet, online information. I think.
Sorry, I think the microphone is not on. Sorry, yeah, we need you to Samula.
I think the word we are looking for is objectivity. I think balance is what you said just now. You're looking for one side of the story or the other side of the story. What people are looking for is an objectivity of the news. That means you're not biased at all. I've consumed internet information for a long time, and I think right now the online media it is still struggling to find its identity, whether it is anti-government, anti-establishment, or pro-government.
Yep.
I think readers who are looking for that objective news are looking for a media that is that. They are not presenting anybody's or their own views or government views, but presenting the views as it is.
So, yeah, you want to respond to that? Yeah, please. Yeah. Go ahead. Who wants? Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. I think it's this balance, neutrality,
Yep.
etc. It's purely semantics in the Singapore context. Because if you look very closely, and we hardly have time for, Singapore is a one-party Orwellian state. It has been that.
One party Orwellian.
Orwellian.
As in George Orwell.
George Orwell, right?
1984.
Animal Farm,
Yeah.
1984.
Yeah.
Very, very Orwellian, and things have not changed since LKY's time. Not when he was in the opposition, not in his earlier days, but later it became a one-party state in numbers. Now we are not one party in numbers, but in spirit, Parliament is a one-party state.
So what's the impact of that?
Yeah, but-
What's the impact of that on the media
impact
coverage?
of that is purely semantics. Whether you call it neutral, the balance, the structures of society, the power dynamics, is very, very, very Orwellian, very, very police state-like. I don't like to use the word police state. Okay, it's one-party state. Thank you.
Thank you. David, I saw you grimacing at some point.
Maybe I should just term this BBO, bias by omission, in the sense that some semblance of neutrality can be achieved by omitting things, but regular omission of many things, like perhaps the size of opposition rallies every night from the mainstream media, the way certain pictures of politicians are featured in a certain way, where some may look heroic and smiling, and some may look like, some beast that Frankenstein created, does create a very powerful impression, and impression not necessarily a positive one for the people to hold the card. So I think one question to people here is that to what extent should we really be arguing up certain policies, which include things like the Newspapers and Presses Act, about who gets to be the chairman of, say, Singapore Press Holdings, for example. There's a huge amount of control behind the scenes in that respect, and whether that stifles civil society, and that's a question for the people to decide.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what people here think.
I'd rather not talk about the media and the direction the media should take. I'd like to center the discussion of the impact on this GE, for this discussion, if you don't mind. So how do you think, whatever you said, plus what Maurice said, how would that impact on the way this media, this election is being covered by the various components of the media, and what's the impact of that on?
Well, the impact of that, for example, is that inconvenient questions may be deliberately not asked, for example. Although some people
Not
have
asked?
not asked. For example, although in this general election, people have asked about things like the People's Association role, for example, separation of powers, but for some reason, the media has not made a focus. There have been no op-eds written about it to any degree of depth. And that has an impact, a long-term impact, I think.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think from a young adult perspective, I think I read more from the online media because I think we are all exposed to the national broadsheet, so that's quite easy to pick up. But I think you get a more balanced viewpoint when you also read the online media, because there are things that, as David said, by omission you don't read about them, and therefore they are not in focus. So before anyone can make a very objective assessment this GE, you need to know both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Yes, please. Can we pass the mic down, please?
Hi. From the perspective of a concerned citizen, I'm not sure whether the issue is one of whether you're balanced versus objective in your approach, because there is no such thing as true objectivity. I think what's more important from a consumer of news is that you're really looking for responsible reporting. I mean, if you report something, attribute it, get your sources right. And I think what's more important is to have a whole diversity of media sources, whether online or in print. And I tend to agree that there's a lot more focus on getting views from alternative news platforms. So my hats off to TOC for the great job. And inconvenient questions. You've introduced online debate or live stream debates, which are really game changers in my view. And that's what we really want, a true contestation of ideas. I think one critique of this GE is that there's too much of the one-liners, slogan throwing, and not enough of the deep contestation of ideas. We're looking for strategies for Singapore's future going forward. And I think more debates would be very healthy.
Wonderful. I saw you, Gerard.
Yeah.
Gerard, I saw you nodding at some point. Were you agreeing with what Nizam was saying?
Actually, I have been consuming, for the GE, I tend to consume online media more. But I found myself at this GE, actually going into the forums, is that like hardware zone. There's a lot of nonsense going on there, but some of the comments are pretty brilliant sometimes. The way an accountant, counts on board and explains that there is what Loh Tia Kiang says about 280,000 in deficit. It's actually true, and then he lists out why you cannot say that the 300,000 that's going to be claimed from the CEIPC is can be used to offset. So I found myself this time around actually going to all these forums and actually finding myself
More informed.
More informed. Of course, I end up laughing out loud sometimes at some of the comments because they are brilliantly hilarious in a very Abing sense. Some people are purposely writing in Hokkien style English or a lot of English, but the logic and the arguments in there are pretty good sometimes.
Yeah. So actually, what I'm sensing here is that while the journalist is expected to aspire towards or strive for neutrality, what the consumer is looking for is balance. You know what I'm saying? What the consumer is looking for is balance. Balance not from one journalist, but by being exposed to, as Nizam said, a broad distribution of viewpoints. And then you make your call in the end. The question is whether the breadth of information and diversity of views ends up confusing you because of poor quality discourse, or does it actually illuminate, right? So let me put this to Ramesh.
Having been a practitioner of covering elections for about 25 years, I think gone are the days where you can use the mainstream media to so-called hantam the opposition. Today, you are expected to have a balanced coverage, definitely. If you cover so many rallies for the PAP, you've got to cover so many rallies for the opposition. You can look at it, you can see in the Straits Times today. Never in the past would you have had that picture of the Raffles Place SDP crowd on the front page of the Straits Times or the mainstream media in the past.
Or even the WP rally picture
rallies,
in the newspaper.
Those huge pictures. Even for television, in those days, if there was no crowd, we were told to take close shots. You got to take close-up shots, to
even now we are seeing that. Even now we are seeing that.
Yeah, of course. But but those days that was the instruction. You got to take close-up shots to show the non-availability of large crowds at certain rallies. But all that is gone today. You got to give as good as equal coverage for the ruling party and the opposition, both on television, which you can see on the news today, also in the newspapers. So I think this issue of balanced coverage is catching on more and more. And I suppose if there is no balanced coverage, then there will definitely be an outcry as to why I can't hear an alternate view or a different view, and why am I being forced to make a judgment just on one point of view?
Yeah.
So
and you will lose credibility
and you will
at
lose
some
credibility.
point. Yeah, Bhavani, I need to put this to you. You've been with the government for a long time, in corporate communications, right? What's your reading of this entire thing, as objectively as is possible?
Actually, I was going to say that for this year, as Ramesh has put it, the coverage in the mainstream media is really balanced. A lot more balanced than in previous GEs. So looking at it from outside, I really feel that they are giving lots of space and airtime to the opposition parties. And when an issue is being debated, you hear both sides of the argument. For example, the other day there was a whole, I think, 2-page spread on the East Coast GRC. And you get to hear all sides. So to me, that's pretty balanced.
Yep.
You're not just looking at one party going in there, talking to the residents or gauging what the ground feel is, but you're also getting the other side, the opposition's views. So putting it together and putting it as a big spread, I think that's balanced coverage, and the voters can then judge for themselves, hearing all sides.
Yeah,
so I think the coverage this year is really better than previous general elections.
I think I would agree with you that it's definitely improved in terms of balance, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's really balanced, because we are starting from a very, very low base.
Okay, the definitions,
No, but it does make a difference. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's really balanced, but I think they're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, Donald.
Well, I think I've seen elections for the last perhaps 50 years now. We way back to the very early years of Barisan versus PAP. But I think what I notice in this today's election is that the people who are coming to the rallies, and this reflects the better standard of education that people have today. The days when had guys howling at rallies and speaking abusive language. Well, I think that's long gone. And so both the opposition as well as the PAP, they have to convince people. And I noticed this. I've been to 2 rallies here up in UOB Plaza. At one, I was in the crowd, and at one rally, and this was again in Raffles Place, the UOB Square. I was in the crowd with, there were some very elegantly dressed ladies who must have had good appointments in the offices around Raffles Place. And they were just, sort of shouting out their support for the PAP, all right? And, well, this is something you would not have thought of a long time ago. And on the other side, I went to a Jason Juan rally, and there were young people, right, who were very astute, who were listening to what he was saying, and they were sort of saying yes, 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 and so you have this audience today, and they are knowledgeable, and I think this is the kind of reflection that you want to be guided by.
Right. So
yes.
Let's pick up the point that you made about young people. Right? There's this general notion that young people, the definition of young in Singapore, by the way, at one point was moving with the age of Lee Hsien Loong. But I think they decided at some point they have to be cut off.
20 years
so we are talking, when you say young, we are talking about people who are probably below 40, right? Now, when we say young people in Singapore, there's a general view out there that young people tend to vote with their heart, less with their head. That they tend to be a lot more impulsive. I'm not sure whether that's being totally fair on young people, or whether we're giving enough credit to young people, right? Yes?
I agree with you. But let me say, as a political practitioner, I like to allow me to say, especially for the young people, the real things have happened before this 9 days. And you know, is it wishful thinking that some journalists, some writers would spend more time talking about the 2 or 3 years of the PAP's preparation for this general election rather than these 9 days. And so the information or the kind of excitement that the young people show is actually quite inconsequential if you omit the PAP's preparation. It is all geared to enhance their purpose rather than for the benefit of any electorate, including young people.
So your point, Maurice, is that the sweetening of the ground happened way before the 9 days.
Well before.
Yeah. Okay. I see
Money,
you.
power.
I see the young man behind you vehemently disagreeing. So let's hear from the young man. Yeah. Go ahead. You look fairly young also.
Well, in terms of what he mentioned just now about the cherry picking or sweetening of the ground, I actually do not totally agree with his view. Although there's a build-up by both the PAP and also with the Workers' Party with the introduction of young adult candidates to the electorate, it's actually, especially these 9 days these few days that you see an explosion in political awareness among the young, because I tend to follow most of the online news and also on social media, Facebook in particular, where previously quite a number of my apolitical friends suddenly are talking quite a lot of political issues, on the candidates they like, on the candidates they diss, on all the things, the issues that you have never heard from them before. So it's all this inner burning desire that's waiting to come forth, to burst out from within.
Yeah.
Yeah, I disagree with Maurice as well. I think, and I also think that we young people do not just vote with the heart, but also we try to understand the issues, because for too long we have been depending on the mainstream media for our information, and now we have the internet opening up a lot of new boundaries. So I think young people are not just. I think this election is important for the future of the country, and the future of the country is all about the young people, because I don't want to see a country that's not vibrant at SG 100, 150. I don't want to see the young people not being involved right now and then suffering the consequences. So being more engaged with the political scene in Singapore, I try to provide like balanced viewpoints or the other side of the story that's not being covered or not being picked up by the mainstream media or by the online sources of traditional media.
Are you the norm or are you an anomaly?
I think I'm an anomaly, but I hope to change that.
Okay, so you feel that at this point you could be an anomaly, but you do see a trend of greater political interest and
yes, and I do not think
apathy.
Yes, and I do not think that what the young people are doing online is inconsequential, because I think many people's minds have been opened when I tell them interesting things about the political scene. So it's not that it's inconsequential, and I think every vote counts. So you educate one at a time.
Yeah, actually, I mean, my own experience. I've got a 16-year-old girl, very difficult age. You know, she has very interesting conversations with me about the election. I mean, it could also be about parenting, right? I mean, I'm involved. I've always been involved. My wife is involved. So we have conversations, dinner conversations about this, and so on. You know, but she tells me that many of her classmates, 16 years old, you know, they are talking about this, even though they're a few years more before they can vote. So I do think that there is a fire being lit out there, and I do feel personally that we might be doing a disservice by using a broad brush and saying that they're all young, they don't understand, they're impulsive, and so on. And we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we keep doing that. Carol, you've done a fair bit of research in this area, I believe. So what's your sense?
Maybe just following up on his point, I think he didn't just talk about young people being more interested or engaged, but I thought his point on people being a bit more discerning and maybe exercising some deliberation when they look for information online is quite interesting, which links to the earlier point discussion on neutrality, balance, etc. So when we talk, I completely agree with Ramesh and the other Bhavani who commented on the more balanced approach taken by the mainstream media during this election. The amount of coverage given to the PAP and the opposition parties is really different compared to
even
2011 and even certainly 2006
Yeah.
and way before that, right? So we are actually seeing a lot more fairness or balance in terms of the space given and also the amount of the kind of information that they're covering. I'm just also thinking, you know, as a researcher, I think we've discussed this at work as well. To what extent is this change in approach reflective of the mainstream media's recognition that in order, especially in the heat of competition from the online space, in order to maintain readership, audienceship, and certainly credibility, to what extent is this an important or necessary thing that they have to do? You know, providing more balanced coverage, right? But interestingly, I think this also makes us think about the online space, given its current state. For an online player who is aspiring to attract more eyeballs, more readership, for instance, to what extent does it also have to evolve and be seen as being balanced instead of overly partisan or critical? So
credible.
Yeah.
Credible.
In order to come across as credible and have a good readership and eyeballs.
So
can I just add to that? Maybe Carol's a bit modest here. Because we, both of us, did a study on the rationality of the online space. I don't believe that you should expect the online space to be rational, because I think that sometimes our brain, our mind is overrated, that people should think about politics from the heart, you know, vote according to their heart, just as we vote according to our minds too, right? Because there is, to use that famous phrase from Dr. Catherine Lim, right? The question of the affective divide, that people need to appeal to you not just as a robot thinking a computer, but as a person, because our identity, our sense of being Singaporean is not just tied to our rationality, right? But our feelings. So I think that in Singapore, the discourse about that we always ought to be rational about politics is, I think, misguided.
Or even the word constructive.
Yeah,
I don't know what the word constructive means.
Yeah.
Because there was a minister who made a statement once that suggests that if you disagree with a policy at a fundamental level, it's not being constructive. Yeah. To be constructive, you've got to agree with the policy, but agree to tweak it.
Yeah. The word constructive is that,
because there are policies that you may disagree with fundamentally. Does that make you unconstructive? So some of these paradigms need to be shifted so that discourses can be a lot more open, honest, and yet retain a certain level of civility.
Yes.
Right? If I could ask you this question, Tan, IPS had done some quick study on the reach of some of the articles from the online space in this election, right? You were mentioning earlier when we were outside, you were mentioning that some of the articles published by Mothership, for example, the online portal, has reached hundreds of thousands of views, right? Would you want to comment on that? In other words, purely from the perspective of reach. I mean, if you talk about the Straits Times, you're talking about a reach of about 1 million, right? If you talk about today, close to that, right? But the online space is also reaching out in large numbers. Is that a fair comparison?
I think that in particular with the advent of the middle ground, what I call websites, the middle websites, which are as a contrast to TOC, are both at the same time anti-government or pro-government and willing to consider perspectives which goes beyond just the political. So for example, you look at Mothership, its approach is in a way almost a mix, a marriage between sometimes entertainment and politics, and that appeals to a wide demographic, right?
Yeah.
It's some of its headlines are what I'll call what's been called upworthy, you know.
Yeah.
5 things you learn about, right? I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if it opens people to political knowledge, it is a good thing. So that has changed the space. I think that the difference between 2006 and 2011 is the emergence of websites like the middle ground, websites like Mothership, and of course Inconvenient Questions. If you look at the reach, right, this is looking at the figures from Alexa, which is international ranking of websites. So Alexa's ranking of Singapore websites, the most popular websites. Singapore Straits Times Online is 14, CNA Online is 18, and then Today is 59. Mothership is not far behind at 74, right? And then TOC is at 113.
When was this, Tanao? When was this?
Yesterday's, when we put down the data, right? And this is in terms of visitors.
What about Yahoo?
Yahoo, we didn't look for that.
Okay.
Yeah. But unfortunately, Inconvenient Questions, considering the format, right, is 2,866. Sorry, Vishwa. But that's understandable. You occupy a different intellectual...
We are what you call boutique.
Yeah. Niche, yeah.
Niche, huh?
A very important niche area. And if you look at the numbers, right, you get about 5 to 6K visitors a day, right? And then your videos get 10K.
Yeah.
But if you look at Low Tia Kiang's Teochew speech, it's 174,000. And then you look at Chi Sun Juan's speech, there have been several videos. There's 300,000, 200,000, right? And then if you look at Mothership, in the last 2 or 3 days, 3 stories have garnered altogether 500,000. And I got this from Mothership just now.
That's significant.
Yeah, a lot of views, right? And the stories are on why Tharman is the Tharman is the only reason why people still have hope in the PAP. The second one is how the ex-GIC economist Yeo Lam Kiong gives issues, sorry to say this on TV, badass reply to DBM Tharman's. And then the third one is why Mothership itself was strong about Leon Pereira.
Right.
So it's a significant reach. A lot of
Yeah, it
people
is.
are reading this.
So the ground is slowly leveling, right? And not through sensationalism, but through credible, balanced or neutral journalism, right? Now at this point, I'd like to take a caller. Her name is Angie Tarn. Angie, are you there? Can we hear your question, please? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
My
Hi,
name is Angie.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, my question is, do you think the ban on opinion polls is still relevant in this day and age?
The ban on opinion polls in Singapore,
It's irrelevant. Yes.
there's a ban on opinion polls during the hustings,
Yes.
right? Is it still relevant in this day and age? Angie, stay online, stay online. I'd like to put this question to, of course, Ang Peng Hua.
You're not taking a poll of the audience?
Yeah, we could take a poll of the audience after this. But let's hear from the expert.
Yeah, actually there was a study, and I was part of the group that studied this issue. This is eons ago now. And actually, to our surprise, we found that there were a few countries that actually had a similar sort of ban. I think one of the sort of instigators of this was the election in South Korea, where the former president Roh was elected. And what happened is in the morning he was losing, and then young people mostly, mobilized through SMS, and then afternoon he swung it around, and then he eventually won. So the concern is that this sounds a bit emotional, last minute, and seat of the pants kind of decision. So in fact, a few countries, not just Singapore, but a few countries had this. So it was discussed. I think the conclusion was not to have it. Yeah, not to have this online poll. Basically, not to influence results based on numbers, because in the social science we know that it does influence you if you know how your friends are voting, how their friends do things. So there seems to be some influence there. There is no sort of a concrete study on this, like what will happen if you have this results or not. But based on sort of other findings, other research, it is possible. You can make a case that it might be influenced unduly.
But there are other ways in which voters are being influenced, not just by polls, right? I mean, you may not call it a poll, but the mainstream media sometimes does some kind of poll, So it's semantics after a certain point. Angie, what is your reason for asking this question? Angie? Are you still there?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. For a moment, I thought you were in Whitley. Okay, sorry. No, what is your reason for asking this question?
Well, I guess I wondered then, now given the fact that we hear from the politicians, but we don't really know how the ground feels at times. And if you see this a few hundred people in one rally, and then if you see tens of thousands in another, how much of it really? I mean, I want to know if we put it out to the public and collect the polls. What kind of answers will we get? I'm not quite sure it's going to be the same or the same. And personally, I'm not convinced that having the polls will sway really serious-minded voters in any way.
So your point is it becomes another data point, but it will not be conclusive, right? That's the point of view. Yes,
I mean, just let us know how the ground feels. But if we are serious enough about the election and the politicians we're going to vote in, then we'll have a mind on our own. But it just gives us a sense of the ground, how it feels, that it may or may not, I don't know. So the less informed maybe, I think maybe, and at the moment I don't know how many are really that informed as voters and how interested are we in the current issues that we present.
Thank you very much, Angie. We got the point. Thank you. Yes, Peng.
So,
bye-bye.
So not quite on this point, but something similar. They've done studies in the US and India and asked people, after the elections, who did you vote for, Did you vote and who did you vote for? Did you vote overrepresented? Many people didn't vote, but like those actual percentages who say they voted was way higher than who actually turned up. That's one. Secondly, the guy who actually won suddenly had a higher percentage. So now people were claiming that they voted, and they voted for the winning candidate, but they actually didn't. So that's on one data point to note as well. There's some sort of winner syndrome there. Yeah.
We also asked a question in the last survey after the 2011 election. We asked people, who do you vote for? So the choices given to them was, I voted for the PAP, I voted for the opposition, I did not vote. And then we did not give any other choice. Almost 50% said they refused to answer. Right? I think that says something about the sort of political climate. Either people were ignorant, thinking that you can't, the thing that the vote is secret means that you can't tell people how you voted, or people are afraid to tell a surveyor how you voted. And interestingly, of the people who said they voted for either PAP or the opposition, 72% said they voted for the PAP, and the rest said they voted for the opposition. So I don't know whether it's partly because of that effect that you tend to recall things in favor of the overall winner, or the fact that there is some amount of fear if you have voted for the opposition to report that.
I think quite likely the second one.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, go ahead, Howard.
Oh no,
what's your view? What's your view on this?
Well,
do you think it should be made?
I mean, the sense that I get is that since we do have, one of the key purposes, I guess, of exit polls is that if, let's say, you feel that the party that you're supporting is not really getting that kind of the kind of support that you want it to get, so you go out and encourage your friends to support it some more. That could work in a situation, I guess, where voting is not mandatory, right? But if everyone has to vote, and as Tan Hao's research does show, a good half of the people have already more or less decided who they want to vote for, way in advance. So does it really matter whether we have the exit polls or not? I mean, to me, it might not be critical, but it's also not a game changer in that sense.
And so your sense is, if it's not a game changer, why don't you make it not illegal?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits, I guess, if you know my position, I'll say that whatever doesn't really make sense to be illegal should just be legalized. So I would agree that, yeah, in a certain sense, why not just let us do it? And what are the benefits that can come out of doing it? I could say that essentially it gives the parties a better sense of exactly where they stand. So, with the view that you may not want to do it just closer to the elections, maybe even a year before you start doing this kind of polls.
Start building that.
Yeah, it gives them a sense of how they can tweak the approach to the electorate.
Good.
Yeah.
Quick point.
It's a quick point. I don't know if it's worth it or not, but I got a bookies list for all the GRCs. So if you want it, let me know.
So that's a poll. That's an illegal legal poll. Yes.
It's illegal, including the odds, right?
Especially the odds.
Mike, please.
It's about selective perception, isn't it?
Yeah.
For instance, this point about whether this GE has been the easiest in the entire history of the PAP, easiest for the PAP, apart from the fact that, our great late leader Lee Kuan Yew, death has also caused it to be one of the easiest general elections. Now, it is about selective perception, isn't it? Now, you can't ask people, and we should, what are the factors, the forces that made it the easiest GE for the PAP? I'm sure a lot of journalists don't reach the point to want to ask this question. That is our problem. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I'd like to now, thank you, Maurice. I'd like to ask our lovely couple here. We've been quiet, sitting pretty quiet, I was talking more about Amy here, not you. Okay. Can we pass the mic to them? And just want to get a sense from you as a couple, as parents, what's your sense of this GE? Do you feel that, as Maurice says, do you feel that it is a very easy run for the PAP? Or do you feel that you are seeing enough contesting of ideas and it's actually become more difficult for the voter, especially in certain wards, to make a decision? I'm hearing that a lot more. I'm hearing this GE compared to the previous GE. People are conflicted. Even people who used to be very pro-PAP or very pro-opposition are conflicted because you're seeing a slate of fairly credible people, especially in certain wards, right? So, is this really a very easy GE for PAP?
I would like to ask Maurice, maybe we'll talk later to find out how come he thinks it's easy, but I don't think so. I think it's, I think the credibility of the opposition is higher, and we ourselves have debates every evening.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I think people are talking about ideas of alternate points, and it's not just mudslinging. I mean, for me, I'm delighted that the caliber is being raised.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely it's not, to me, it's not going to be an easy election for anyone. Yeah.
It's not your bicycle thief and that kind of fellas coming in, right? If
ever they did, but
some time back, we had very strange characters appearing, and there was a general conspiracy theory that they were all paid for by the PAP, Amy, what's your
Actually,
sense?
I wanted to say something earlier about this thing about the front page with Chi Soon-juan. See, it appeared only after a minister said that there is a likelihood that PAP would lose. So what was the reason for that? Is it balanced or is it a different?
Different. Okay.
I mean, just to highlight that point and going back to that, I don't think putting a picture of an alternative view within your paradigm to use that term shows balance unless you can uncolor it and just put it there in its entirety without coloring it with other placements or captions or other stuff of your own viewpoints. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like encompassing differences.
Leave it raw.
So that, leave it alone. Going back to your neutrality. So that's my take on it. And I think I gained a lot because I'm a very mainstream person, but I gained a lot from alternative platforms. I think the human stories and all that are popping up really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. So, yeah.
Okay. Yes. Nizam, then I'll come to you.
Hi, thanks.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got a few viewpoints that I'd just like to throw open.
Sure.
It's just some observations. To take it from what Tarn said earlier on when you were showing us the ratings of all the different websites and so forth, I think it's another source of information that has just not been realized. I'm part of a web chat group with my friends and everything else, and we send each other lots and lots of links and everything else. I get a lot of information about what's happening PAP and opposition side as well. So I think that's one possibility that we may have to look at if we really want to. Another thing is that I find it was mentioned earlier, the quality and caliber of our young opposition candidates is increasing. And I think that also goes into the psyche of the youth today, the younger voters today, simply because you want people like that to speak on your behalf, of your age group. And I think that is what's important also. Frankly speaking, I think a lot of the people whom I've been talking to, they've said, we've heard the same old tired lines again and again and again. We're forced to dwell in the past. What's in our future? So that's actually another consideration that actually should, bear some observation. Thank you.
Great point. Anyone? Maybe we'll
I
start with
think that
Howard.
if you-
We'll start with Howard.
I think let's go back to on that point, but also to take a little bit step back, and because there was this debate about subjectivity, objectivity, whether you're neutral or balanced. I mean, personally, for me, when I read the mainstream media arguments, and you sort of predict that it's going to be talking about that one fantastic issue that everyone should be really concerned about, but in the end, really no one is concerned about. As a journalist, and you look at that and you start thinking something is not right. It doesn't matter whether you're subjective, objective, or how you want to pitch yourself. At the end of the day, there are important issues in an election that should be discussed but are not being discussed. And what is your reaction to it? Do you think, oh, I have to be objective, so I have to give PAP the same amount of airtime as someone else? You don't do that, because you are not for any party. You are for the people. As a journalist, you write for your audience. And how do you do it? You try to inform them about certain things that, for want of a better word, you yourself, you're subjective in thinking that it is important. And it's part of also when we do go to the ground, and we get a sense of what are the issues that really people are concerned about, and you do want to highlight all these. And as to whether it is really subjective or not, I think just let the people decide. The readers will be able to decide for themselves.
Okay, Tarn.
I think that the great change in the coverage of the mainstream media, in particular the Straits Times of the elections, actually goes back to 2006. That was when the opposition was interviewed, and there was no additional commentary on what they said. For example, you just say what they said, rather than say they claimed this, or they didn't add this, or they failed to do this,
or to
right?
poke holes.
Yeah. So I think the great change happened in 2006. And as for the means in which they try to influence you, of course they continue to influence you. And Amy, you're 100% correct. They do it through means which are much more subtle, right? By placement, by setting the agenda. So, for example, this election has been sold as a WP versus the PAP election. To some extent it is, but definitely not to the extent in which the Straits Times portray, right? For example, one day you have to go through 19 pages of WP and versus PAP before you got to the other opposition candidates, right? That's one thing. And I think to talk about the impact of media, the educational effect, right? I think the greatest beneficiary this round of the social media, the ubiquitousness of social media, has been Dr. Chi.
Yeah.
And he himself has acknowledged that, right? And of course, some of it is directly from the efforts of himself and the party, and some of it is incidental. So, for example, the film Behind the Man by Tay B. Pin, right? As I understand it, an independent, right? Right before the election, I don't know what the timing is like, whether it's fortuitous or otherwise, but basically it humanizes a person who has not been able to portray himself as a person who is ordinary, who is in a family setting, has values quite like you and me, right? And I think he has been the greatest beneficiary, no doubt about it.
So what we're hearing, if I may say so, what we're hearing is that the issue of parity, fairness, justice in the coverage, as well as what's coming through, is increasingly important for the voter. Regardless of where you're voting from, right? I mean, these principles, the fundamental principles of not abusing the power that's vested in you, using it in a more equitable manner, being more gentlemanly in the way you fight the battle, ensuring that all parties in the battle are equally armed. These issues become a lot more front of head issues. For example, right? I was quite taken when I watched the campaign summary a few nights ago on TV. There was a campaign summary of the opposition, highlights of the opposition candidates. Very quick edits. I'm familiar with this because I come from the broadcast media. Very quick edits, not very well edited, I must say, right? Very quick edits. And then immediately after that, with a short break, there was the campaign summary or highlights of the PAP campaign. And suddenly, there was music. There was no music behind it. No, this is subtle, okay? It was very subtle. There was music, and it was rousing music. You know, when certain leaders appeared, before they actually appeared to make the speech, it was rousing music, right? Now, my wife and I were watching it. I turned around and asked my wife, did you hear the music? She didn't. She didn't hear the music. I was a lot more attuned because I'm a production person. I said, no, there was music. She said, yeah, that's true. But it's subliminal. But the moment people start realizing that you are not being fair or equitable, it actually does have an effect on the way you decide on how to cast the vote. Now, how important is this going to be a factor? I'd like to ask all of us, how important in this election is this going to be a factor in making that final decision on the 11th? Yes. Can we pass the mic, please? Yeah.
I think the power of the media, whether it's mainstream media, and by that I meant state-owned media, or the new media, social media, in my opinion, actually has changed. I think the power in terms of political education and political awareness has shifted to the smartphones, especially among the young. Why do I say this? I noticed that my children, I've got 3 sons, 2 of them are voters, and my nephews and nieces. They refer a lot to conversations that originated from WhatsApp chat or Facebook. And of course, they reference it back to your 10 o'clock, summary on CNA, and then the Straits Times. But during lunchtime, they will talk about it again and say, hey, so-and-so, not bad, we should check it out. And so there is this conversation in the last few days.
But what do they talk about?
They talk about candidates that matters to them.
What aspect?
In terms of...
what do they look for?
In terms of what they said, what the news reported about that, and what the alternative media actually say. So I think Tan Hao brought a very interesting point about the Chi Sun Juan phenomena. It is really a new phenomenon. And just a couple of nights ago, Sing First, Hanji said, whether he, purposely did it, but he was very creative. He showed an ice cream, and it was photographed, and it became quite a pretty icon. And I think it went viral for a while. Ice cream, and he shouted out at the audience, "You scream, I buy you ice cream." And actually, one new website, I think, I was told, was going to use that for its icon. So it's little things like this that tells me that actually the dynamics, going back to your first question, the relationship between mainstream media, new media, and the voters has changed forever. I was very intrigued by your comment that this probably is a watershed election. I don't think so. I disagree. I think the watershed election was actually in 2011. This election is just to double confirm that watershed election.
Yeah. So deep watershed.
Why I say so? Because...
No, but I'll have to stop here because we're running out of time. I'd like to if you don't mind, I'd like to to go to the final part of the discussion, which is the exciting part. I'd like to get a sense of how you think things are going to shape on the 11th. What's your sense? To help us in that process, I just want to get a sense of what were some of the most impactful events in the last 9 days. It could be a speech, it could be a statement, it could be anything you saw, a picture, it could be, what are some of the major things that have had an impact on the way you view the parties and the candidates? Think of one. Each one of you, if you could think of one thing that has tilted the balance, that has affected you, you know, positively or negatively, you know. Nizam? Microphone, please. Ralph, I'm coming to you next.
I think this GE is, to me, characterized by a democratization of information.
Yep.
You get direct information from the candidates, from the parties, whether through social media, through non-mainstream media, and also mainstream media. One imagery that has shaped me is actually Dr. Chee Soon Juan's rise, which has been quite phenomenal actually in this GE, and how he has not fallen to the trap of reciprocating a personal attack with another personal swipe. He has taken that high moral ground, and I think that has gained admiration even from the die-hard PAP supporters.
All right. So, Chee Soon Juan, the way he conducted himself in this GE has had an impact on you in the various touch points, right? Right. Ralph?
All right. What I've noticed is that young people nowadays, they are more vocal. I think in my parents' time, it was so different. I remember the first time that I became a voter. I remember my mom pulling me back and telling me, hey, make sure you vote for the PAP. You are writing for the Straits Times. You must remember that. So,
did you?
I did. I did because I think the candidate was definitely worth voting for.
Right.
And what I've noticed is that today's younger people are a lot more honest with their opinions, and they take a stand. This is from talking to parents, as well as even talking to young people themselves.
Right.
And they are not afraid to take a stand either way. Oh, I think the PAP is better, or.
But it's not reckless. What you're saying is
it's not reckless.
They take a stand, but it's
considered.
Not reckless.
Nowadays, it's very considered. It's no more like I like
Good.
hearing this rah thing at the
right. Thanks.
rallies.
Yes.
Okay, this may be a small thing. I was at the Workers' Party rally yesterday, and they were moving towards the grand climax of activities where you might expect that they want to really get people rousing and screaming and shouting and so on, right? And oddly enough, what Chan Shamao told them was, all right, folks, why don't you all sit down? Everyone just sit down so that you can get a better view of yourself, I don't know, or whatever, but everyone sit down. And they did, through peer pressure and shouting.
And just being Singaporean.
Everyone just sat down. And I think the point is, I think it gives an insight into what is going on here, because if the strategy is to try and get people upset and angry enough to vote, you don't get the guys to sit down first. Sitting down, I think, gets in the way of getting emotional and aroused.
Yep.
And I think that perhaps gives you an insight into what at least Workers' Party may be thinking in terms of their calculations, which is simply that ultimately they don't need to press buttons. It's not so much about pressing buttons, perhaps, as perhaps that they know that in the back of the minds of a lot of the voters, perhaps, the thoughts is, and perhaps the question that they are having in their minds is simply, does the PAP really need to have every single seat?
Right.
And so long as that thought is in their minds, I think the Workers' Party and the opposition can get a lot of points across, because the point then is not to convince totally that their point is absolutely the correct argument between A and B. It's simply that if it's good enough to just give them a few more seats to prove the point, let them go ahead and do so.
And the risk is mitigated.
And the risk is mitigated.
Right. Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah. David, before I come to you, I'd like to hear from some of the others who have not spoken. Is there anyone who has not spoken who wants to say something? Yes, please.
Actually, what has impacted me, it's not so much the candidates nor the hustings or what has been going on. I'm in my early 50s. Now, what really surprised me during this last couple of days was people of my age group, a lot of my friends, a lot of my colleagues in my age group, where you think they've been brought up over the last 40, 50 years, should be very thankful, grateful, but somehow those are the people that are the unhappy people. The surprising thing to me was that, I mean, I've got a lot of young friends also, in the 20s and the 30s, and they are actually pro-establishment, taking the into the fact that social media, I'm not talking about the mainstream media, social media, it's a fair bit of negative stuff over there, and young people being more attuned and more attracted to these platforms, somehow rejecting it, and they are more pro-establishment.
So to my question, what is it that you have observed here that has had an impact on the way you're going to decide on Thursday, on Friday?
So back to this balance of media coverage, I will always fall back, personally, I will always fall back to the mainstream media. I read the Straits Times. It's got a fantastic balanced view like what was talked about today. But it has brought me, these friends of mine, the younger group of people, has brought me over to the social media side of things.
You were about to say dark side, but never.
to get a view of what the other side is saying. There's a lot of negativity, you know, but somehow these people are not swayed. So somehow that has got this impact
on you.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, please.
I think there's a distinct difference between this election and the past election. In this election, I see three categories of voters. The young adults, which is 21 to 40, people like us who is between 41 to 64, and the senior citizens. During my time in the last few elections, I don't have to research. I don't even have to read. I know who I wanted to vote. But in this election, I ponder. Why? Because I'm neither a senior citizen that benefits from all the goodies, and I'm also under pressure by my children to start thinking and reading and research and says, Mom, you don't vote blindly. My children sends me viral video, sends me research, sends me link, and every dinner we'll sit down and talk about. They attended all the rallies and they come back and tell me.
You brought them up well.
Right. And they tell me that, Mom, you know, this election is not about you.
Yeah.
It's about us. It's about the next 5 years and the next 10 years. So people like you should start thinking for us. So I can see a distinct difference, and I'm under pressure from my children to actually start attending rallies, and which I have never done.
So this is the first time that you feel this pressure?
Yes. The pressure from the young, they come in groups.
But it's also got to do with the quality of the candidates, right? I mean, if it's a washout versus,
Yes, but you can tell that there are better candidates in the opposition, but obviously there are some who are, who are there for fun of it, and we all know that.
So let me ask you this question. Anyone can comment on it, right? Do you think the appeal is rhetoric? There was a time when some of them, had a huge draw, like Harban Singh, remember those days? Packed audience, Fullerton Square rally, and where he would say, do you know that Goh Keng Swee was a char kway teow seller and all this, Then people say, right, Donald? But it's not that kind anymore. I mean, it's not about entertainment. It's not just pure rhetoric. Is there substance that's coming with the rhetoric? What's your sense? Yes.
I think what's important is the quality of the candidates that has changed this scenario. And I mean, apart from the fact that they are substantial, they also have the gumption to take part and be part of the opposition.
And that's admirable for you.
And the thing is, what is very important is for the voters to think back and really make the right decision. Because the thing is, if some of the good opposition candidates do not come in, the problem will be, it will set the same pattern over and over again, that you frighten away good candidates who could, future candidates who could stand for election and be part of the opposition. And if they say, my goodness, we had such good quality candidates in opposition, but none of them came in, my goodness, why should I step forward and do what they did? So we all have to think very carefully. We should give the opposition candidates, the good opposition candidates, a chance, really, because otherwise we will end up doing the same thing over again. We will end up having a single party system all over again, which is, to tell you frankly, not very healthy.
Right. And if I may just ask this question, anyone can respond. The question is, there's also, do you also sense that the climate of fear, threats, dirty politics, gutter politics has actually come down? There were one or two attempts in the beginning. Then we're not seeing very much of it. And anyone who's trying it is actually, it's backfiring. So I'm sensing, for example, that nobody's really daring to go that way because there's a general rejection of that kind of conduct. Or am I just imagining it? What's your general sense?
Well, it does backfire. I mean, like when we had the forum with the 10 political candidates, the one who was in the ruling party. I mean, I wouldn't mention names, but she was very condescending, and that put off a lot of people in the audience, me included.
Right.
I'll say that with this election comes much greater scrutiny from both sides of the divide, especially for PAP candidates, some of whom have never been under such close attention before. So every word they say, every action they did is closely watched. So whenever certain PAP candidates make slips like "Heng, I'm not Malaysian," if you know that, then
no. But I think that's par for the course. I mean, that's okay. I'm saying, the kind of gutter politics, the scandals, trying to dig up the kind of dirt. I'm not seeing that. There was the attempt in the beginning, remember, with the Workers' Party candidate. Then it died. Nobody really came up. I mean, what's your sense, panel? This whole gutter politics thing.
I don't even know why, to begin with, you should feel any consolation from that. I just thought we shouldn't be doing that to begin with.
No, I agree. I agree. But it's not consolation. I'm saying the fact that is not existent, right, actually allows for fairer play. People actually coming out and talking about things that matter without having to look over their shoulder. That climate of fear factor was there, as you said just now.
I think that, just now I said the first election in which the Straits Times had a sort of sea change in the coverage was 2006. No, actually I meant 2011, which was just one election away. Even in the election, there was an attempt to slur somebody by his sexuality, right? Very early in the campaign, and that was actually rejected by the people. And now, with the complaint against Daniel Goh, the baseless complaint and quite sorry behavior of the mainstream media to pursue it without any evidence, was also resoundingly rejected by people.
That's right.
Then the attempt to use character slurs is also, I think, seems to be rejected by the people. If you see from the comments to the people
and
who have tried
very categoric rejection is coming through.
Yeah.
Peng, what's your sense?
Yeah, I would say that probably the word that you use it also is the notion of fairness. I think people just want the sense of fairness, not sort of taking an unfair advantage. But something else that I however, kind of worry about, because like the PAP, I look ahead as well. But like unlike the PAP, I can't do anything about it. And that is the shape of our social media. Because I expected some memes to come around. Every year we had it, Mr. Brown and Bar Chow me. Okay, that's memorable. So you show friends come, hey, did you see this, And then the last one was some other, memes that went around. And this year there's like none. Can you think of memes that went around?
Is that a lament or?
It's a lament. It's a lament because I have a class tomorrow, and we want to review memes and like what has gone around, what has gone viral. why did it go viral? What's special about this? They went viral, and like I can't think of many that come around. So I'm kind of worried for tomorrow anyway.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Sorry, just on that point, I think yes, while we are seeing less of the other stuff, but this two pattern thing is, to me, sort of is devolving to a certain level of debate, which to me is really unhealthy. I mean, if given a chance, we'll just wipe all of that off. Yeah.
What is that you're talking about?
Two pattern. Yeah. So that is it's a bit unnecessary.
Sure.
And it's really quite below the belt, if you ask me.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes more, so let's keep it going fast. Yes.
You were saying what are the images that...
images or anything? Anything for that.
I was at UOB Plaza the other day to try to watch the SDP rally. The image number 1 would be the long line of people actually wanting to shake hands with him and to get his autograph and to pose. I mean, I remember back in the 90s when the way he was slammed for being a psychopath and stuff like that. And it was a complete sea change. And to me, that is one very strong image. The other one is the Workers' Party's Optimus Prime truck. When you read the story about how these people can come up with this idea to rent the truck, tell this fella to go and drive from this part of Singapore to the other and then come back again, and then suddenly the lights come on. I mean, it shows that this, to me, it tells me that there are some creative brains in this party, you know, and that's probably how...
Maybe all the meme guys went over there.
That's probably also how, I mean, and also when you listen to their speeches and you see how they are building on one train of thought and argument after another, there are some really smart and creative people behind this smaller party called the Workers' Party, and that's fascinating to watch how they come together at this point in time.
Yeah, David. Yes.
I think the biggest impact, I'm talking about media here, is that how this year I just found that it's incredible that we can have a personalized, curated news feed about what we want to see, what we're looking to delve into, and we can get snapshots of so many aspects, like a 360 view of the GE, including clangers, videos of anyone speaking. And I think the ones that stood out to me is watching not only the rehabilitation of Dr. Chee Soon-Juan, but also the rise of Dr. Paul Tambaya, who's one of the few people who goes up there and speaks with the power of near ministerial quality. And when you see these candidates coming through the woodwork, suddenly what you thought of in the incumbents as being great is now only good. And those you thought were good are kind of mediocre. And when you think about what they're being rewarded with, people start getting a little bit confused and a bit torn in terms of their loyalties and their decisions. That, to me, is my personal biggest.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap. Thank you. Let's wrap with just some quick responses to one question. It's a slightly cheeky question. Who were some of the people who were your stars? Who were some of the people who were stars in this election? Right? No, let's hear. Bring the mic to you. Let's just have a quick sprinkling of ideas.
Tambaya for me.
Paul Tambaya from SDP.
Paul Tambaya as well.
Yeah.
Likewise, Paul Tambaya.
Leon Pereira.
Paul Tambaya and Chee Soon-Juan.
Leon Pereira.
PAP Ong Yi Kang.
Ong Yi Kang, okay.
The reason I say that is because of the content of his speech. And I think Bertha Hansen got it right. He was the only candidate who articulated as closely as he could. And I thought he did it quite well, although he was at a disadvantage being part of the incumbent ruling party.
Yeah.
He put himself in the role of a voter and asked all those valid questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, those questions really are serious and with great content.
Thank you.
And I thought he did it pretty well.
Great.
I think Dr. Chee made a great impact, especially talking of character and personality. Because at the end of the day, he gets back, as what I think you wrote this morning again, the likability of the candidate. It counts a lot. Because whether you're in the grassroots or in terrace houses, they look at you, the face shows more than the party and whether they can trust you.
Thank you. Maurice.
Yes, indeed. I know Dr. Chee very, very well. and I wish him really. He's gone through a lot, right?
So for you, he's the star because you know him, or who is the star? Who is the star for you? Who is the star?
Star.
Yeah. In this election.
Dr. Chi, obviously.
Anyone else?
Seeing, he has he's revived himself.
Yeah.
Obviously.
No, you don't have to give explanation. We don't have time.
Yeah.
Just name. Is there anyone else who's the star for you?
No.
All right. Thank you.
For me, it's Louis Ng.
Louis Ng.
Yeah, he's
PAP.
He is
From
animal
ACRES.
activist.
Yeah.
But I like the way he said it, that if there is a house on fire, there's a human being and a dog inside, I save the human being, but I won't leave the dog alone. I will go back for the dog. I think there's so much humility and such a nice person. If he's my MP, I vote for him.
So why didn't he say he will take the dog first? See, it was a politically correct answer.
Well trained.
Because the dogs haven't come to a level where they can vote. Right, okay.
For me, it is Dr. Chi and Dr. Paul Tambaya. Because I think they spoke to us. And I felt that they really knew the issues that mattered to a lot of people.
Yeah, I just want to make it very clear that this program is not sponsored by SDP. and we didn't pick all of you on the basis of that you like SDP. It's just, by the way, anyone listening here, sprinklers, it's just random. Okay, yes.
Dr. Tambaya and Leon Pereira.
And Leon Pereira.
Got my attention.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. No, sorry, behind.
Okay,
sorry, no, behind.
Dr. Tambaya and Leon Pereira.
Leon Pereira, okay. Bhavani.
For me, it's Leon Pereira and Tarman Shanmugaratnam. I think they were really very cool guys who spoke very rationally.
Right, thank you.
Well, for me, it's Lee Hsien Loong, and I'll tell you why. I attended the rally there, and I attended Chee Soon Juan.
You're talking about the lunchtime rally?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know Chee Soon Juan received a tremendous applause at the end of the thing. But you know something? Lee Hsien Loong received an even louder applause from everyone who was there.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing is that he laid out exactly what is ahead of us. He's laid out what is already there. It's not something that hasn't been done, all right? And he's just taking it a step further into the future.
Right,
and
thank you.
I think I vote that way.
Thank you. Yeah.
Leon Pereira and Loh Thia Kiang.
Thank you.
Dr. Chi, Dr. Tambaya, and I think SDP has run a very effective campaign, not just in terms of reaching out to people emotionally and with compassion, but actually very sound policies that they have proposed, more clearly than all the other opposition parties. I would also mention Leon Pereira.
Right, thank you.
For me, Tharman has always been my hero. I just like the way he spoke.
I thought Rama was your hero.
Politics.
You have this thing for Indian men.
Yes, I do. With substance. He has always been, but for this election, Dr. Chi really stood out for me. I really liked the way he conducted himself throughout, and what he spoke about was very real issues, and I felt like he really understood where we were coming from.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
For me, the stars have been the calmness and the quick wit of the main players in many of the opposition parties.
Anyone in particular?
Actually, quite a few of them. I mean,
anyone that
for me,
who has
what
not been
stands
named
is the calmness, and not being ruffled,
and being able to think on your feet.
Yes, and being quick-witted.
Yeah, quick-witted is different from clever by half. Because there were some attempts at being clever by half. Are you differentiating the two?
Now that you mentioned, yes, I better be quick-witted.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
One person, two reasons. Daniel Goh, I mean, as an academic and who studies communication, I think I'm proud of him for being an academic and being able to communicate with the layperson. The other reason is his reaction with regards to the allegations that were made against him.
Yeah.
I thought he set a gold standard on how not to deal and how not to react to gutter politics.
Wonderful, thank you. Peng Hua.
Okay, I'm somebody is not mentioned, and I'm for the underdog. Poor Han Hui Hui. Probably lose the deposit, right? So, not how many people say, but Leong Si Hian, I just happened to catch the video and I thought he gave some good points. It's all numbers. People probably don't understand, they probably lose, whatever, but I thought he was trying his damnness, was trying the hardest.
Right, thank you. Howard.
If it's just for the hustings, I would to say Dr. Chi, Dr. Paul Tambaya, and might surprise you, Louis Ng. I'll go for the PAP guy because I think there's a certain genuineness about him, which I mean, animal lover. What more can you ask for? If I were to go a little bit further back, I would have to say Lina Chiang. Not only just in terms of the speeches that she made in Parliament, but also the way that she approaches people. I mean, that's totally different. There's someone that you want as a people MP. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
From the three major parties, I think PAP, Tarn, WP, Daniel Goh, and SDP, Dr. Chi.
And Daniel Goh because?
Daniel Goh because he graced under fire, a sharp intelligence, and an emotional connection which I found quite lacking from many of the very, I would say, mechanical and standard candidates. They spoke but without heart, and they spoke above you, from the top down to you. They spoke sometimes with a lack of sincerity, I feel. And that, I think that's what's lacking in the politics now, that the politicians are on your side, that they are the real kopitiam people, that you don't have to write an email to them in order to come into touch with them. I think that is sorely lacking in the politics now. And I think these three people all have that. And Tarn, in his own way, for example, made that connection in his very graceful, intelligent,
and gracious,
human way. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I'd like to pick up on that. I mean, my own sense of it is there's one word that I think defines the quintessential candidate. That's authenticity. You know, I think all of us, regardless of our partisan affiliations or otherwise, are increasingly looking for someone who is the same person on stage and off stage, who doesn't start, you know, using dialects to score points, but uses dialects because he loves the dialect, you know, and you can tell. And the thing that I found quite offensive was when I felt that my intelligence was underestimated, that I couldn't call the bluff, you know, that you could get away with PR lines that you don't mean. And it's for me showing that as an electorate, as a people, we have actually come a long way. For me, that is, we are the stars. The electorate are the stars of this election for me. Because we have become, from what my observation, we have become a lot more discerning. We are not being given the credit that's due to us. You know, I have a lot more confidence at this time round. The decisions that many of us are going to make on the 11th, they're not going to be just from, you know, the heart, you know, indulgent. We're not that easily swept. I think it's going to be an optimal combination of head, heart, and gut. You know, and
Can I say something?
Yes, the quick one.
I know this is part of the PAP stratagem, but I need to say there is this missing alternative prime minister that the PAP has been talking about. And it is a deliberate stratagem which, you know, on both sides. The PAP has created it and the opposition have fallen for it.
So, Maurice, I agree with you. And that's the whole point. What I'm saying is people are not dumb. They can see through these things, we can understand, and these are important considerations for many of us. We are all concerned about who would be the Prime Minister down the road. So it is not that we are not concerned. I think Singaporeans, whether you are a first-time voter or you are a sixth-time voter, it doesn't matter. You know, I think there is a certain collective reflex I'm seeing amongst us, right? So what I hope we can continue to see in the next couple of days is that calm, centeredness amongst us, without fear, without feeling the need to favor, to go out there and vote with a conscience that rises above these considerations, And I think we have a lot of reason to be confident whatever the outcome is on 9/11. So on that note, I'd like to thank my panelists, Tan Hao, Howard, Peng Hua, and you, audience. You've been a fabulous audience. You spoke from your heart, and that's what keeps the buzz going. Social media will become a lot more responsible, a lot more accountable, and a lot more dependable if you continue to be what you are, right? So, audiences like you are important. Our studio audience, as well as our friends who are watching from home live, you can continue to watch us on other programs that go live on www.iq.sg. So do keep your inconvenient questions coming in. Some of them are quite inconvenient to us as well, beyond the GE. Share your views, log on to our website, www.iq.sg, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Think hard, think long, and vote from the heart. Make the right choice. I don't know what it is, but as we said, rise above the din, right? Now, on that note, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone. Remember, you're watching GE 2015 Debate IQ live only on www.iq.sg. Thank you very much. Good discussion, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,